Welcome back to this video series of C++ programming. This is the lecture 2 of this video series, and today we are going to write our first C++ program. To do that, you should have an editor and compiler installed in your computer. There are many compilers available like Microsoft Visual Studio, CodeBlocks, Stave C++, and many online code compilers as well. You can download any one of this. For this video series, I'm going to use Microsoft Visual Studio 2019 Free Community Edition that can be downloaded from the Microsoft official web page. So let's get started. When you open the Microsoft Visual Studio, you should able to see this window. To create a new project, go to option File, New and Project. Search for C++. Select Empty C++ project. Click on Next. Specify the name of project. Specify location where you want to save the project. And finally click on Create to create a new project. So as you can see, lecture 2 is our main project, and inside this main project different folders are created. Now we'll add a file to our project. To do that, right click on this folder called source files, select add and then new item. This provides you an option to select the type of file. We need .cpp, that is C++ file. So select this option, specify the name of file. By default it is source.cpp. Check the location where you want to add this file and click on add. Now you can see this new file is added to our main project. Alright, we'll write a program that will take an input from the user, that is through a keyboard, and display the same input onto your computer screen, that is the console window. But before that, I will write one statement here. So this is called a function, and this is an entry function in C++. But what is the function? To understand the function, let's take one analogy. Let's consider a supermarket nearby to your house. What is the supermarket? The supermarket is a place where you get the groceries, you get the fruit, vegetables, you might get the clothes as well. So, what you do, you go to the supermarket, you shop, you pay the bill, and you return back. And each supermarket will have a unique name so that you can distinguish with other supermarket. Similarly, there is, if you want to buy electronic appliances or you want to buy the clothes, you will go to a shopping mall. Similar to supermarket, shopping mall will also have a unique name, and you do the same thing in shopping mall. You go there, you buy, you pay the bill, and you return back. But you are not the only one person who visit the supermarket or shopping mall. There are thousand other people who also visit the same supermarket or shopping mall. So what is the relation of this thing with the function? The function does exactly the same thing. The function, when you call the function, it contains a certain functionality. So suppose this is the main function. You will call this main function. When you call this function, inside this function, there will be a set of code written or the functionality. The function executes this functionality and return back with or without a value. What is the unique thing about the function? The unique thing is the function has a unique name. So each function has a unique name, and the code that is written inside the function is stored into a common location. So if you call this function from different 100 different locations in your program, the same piece of code will be executed over and over again. So that saves your computer memory. You don't have to write these things 100 more times. Here main is called as an entry function. This is called as an entry function because when your program starts executing, it will first hit this function, and then rest of the code will be executed within this main function. So if you want to write any other function or code, you should write within this main function. The syntax of main function is simple. Part before this main or the function name is called as a type of that function. Here void means the function doesn't return anything. If the part after main contains the parameter of that function, so you can pass the certain parameters to that function. In case of main, the parameters will typically be empty. So unlike C programs, you don't have to specify the void if you are not passing anything to the main function. You can leave this as empty. But if you want to pass anything to a main function, that can be passed if you are running your program from the command prompt. So where you can pass the different values, you can pass the string or any other thing. So this is all about the function. Now, if you want to take any input from the user, you should store that into your program so that it can be used for the later purpose. For that, you need a variable. So I'll create a one variable here. This is a name. Name is a one variable and it is of a type character. Rather, it is a array of character and it holds the max 20 characters. So name is a variable and it is a array of character. So what is variable? Variable is a symbolic name given to a memory location. There are two kinds of memories. One is a data memory and another is a program memory. The variable is typically stored into a data memory and the code or that is a set of instructions is stored into a program memory. So when you write something to this variable, it will be actually returned to a memory location to which this name is pointing to. And if you are reading from that particular memory, if you are reading from this particular variable, you are actually reading from that memory location. So this is about the variable. Now I will add statements that will take an input from the user and store into this newly created variable and display the same input onto the computer screen. So this first statement take an input and store into this variable name, and this statement takes the content of this variable and displays onto a computer screen. Let's understand more about these two statements. But first let's understand about the cin and cout here. The prefix C in this cin and cout stands for the console. So cin is called as a console input and cout is called as a console output. However, when C++ was created, originally this prefix C was called as a character. So cin was called as a character-oriented input and cout was called as a character-oriented output. But the term console suits more here in case of cin and cout. The reason is console is an application that acts as an interface between the operating system and a user, or it acts as an interface between the user and different applications running on your operating system. So why you need a console? So console is a kind of a terminal window where user can display the different outputs. So if your program wants to display any output or it want to display any error, it can be displayed on the console window. Similarly, if your program wants certain input, that can be passed from the user through this console window. So cin and cout deals with the console window and they are called as a console input and a console output. The second thing about cin and cout is that they are object. So cin is an object of a class called as iStream and cout is object of a class called as OStream. So what is an object and class? We'll talk more on the object and classes in the upcoming videos. But for now, understand the object is an instance of a class. So what is object? Object is an instance of a class. Class is one entity that contains the different properties. And when you create an object of the class, that object holds all the properties that is present within that class. So cin holds all the properties of a class called iStream and similarly cout holds all the properties of a class called OStream. What follows after this cin object is say this two greater than signs. This is called as an extraction operator when used with the cin. So this is called as an extraction operator. Similarly, these two less than signs after the cout object is called as an insertion operator. So when these two less than signs used with the cout is called as an insertion operator. So what it does, it takes the input from the console window, get into the scene object, and then it is extracted into this variable called as a name. Similarly, here the content of this name is then inserted into this object cout, which is then displayed onto your console window through the input-output interfaces. I will add one more statement here. So what it does, it displays this enter the name string onto the console window. Since this is a string, you have to specify into this two quotes mark. Another important thing to understand here is you can add more than one string or more than one variable after the cout. So this is called as a multiple insertion. So you can specify this variable name or you can specify any other string here and so on. So ideally n number of parameters can be inserted in the cout. I will add one more statement and this is called as infinite while loop. The reason I have added this while loop is because I don't want to exit my program so that I can display the output onto a console window. So we created one variable. The reason I have created this character array is because I'm assuming that the user will enter input as a string and I can store that string into this character array. Then we wrote a statement to display this string and then we wrote a statement to take the input and to store into this variable called name and display the content of this variable onto the console window. Well, now if you see carefully, the program is somehow not able to resolve the declaration of the cout and cout objects, and it is showing some red colored zigzag line below the cout and cin objects. So how can we solve this issue? To solve the issue, I will add one more statement here. So I have added this statement at the top of this file before this main function. This hash include is called as a preprocessor directives, and what follows after this preprocessor directives is called as a header file name. So in this case, iostream is a header file. iostream stands for the input output stream. Since it is a header file, unlike C programs, you don't have to specify the .h extension. And even if you specify this .h extension, it will be considered as an error and compiler won't compile the code. But what this iostream header file contains? It contains the declaration of the cout and cin objects. Not only that, it also contains the prototype for the functions those deals with the input-output operations. The actual definition of these functions is present somewhere in the library files, but this file just contains the prototypes or references of these functions so that compiler will know that the actual definition of this function is located somewhere else in the library files. So this statement hash include iostream replaces the content of this header file, replaces all the contents of this header file in this line. Alright, but still you can see the compiler is still not able to resolve this identifier cout and cin. So I will add one more statement here using namespace std. We'll shortly understand the meaning of this statement, but after writing this statement, now you can see the compiler is able to resolve the declaration of cin and cout objects. So now we'll compile the code. To compile the code, go to the option build and build solution. So it has compiled successfully without any error. Let's run the program. So now it has displayed the string enter the name onto the console window and is asking the user to enter the input. So I'll specify one string here, and once you press enter, it will display that string onto the computer screen or the console window. So that's great. So this is what you were expecting from this program. Alright. Now let's understand the meaning of this statement using namespace std. Why do you need this statement here? And what is this namespace here? The namespace is a standard C++ keyword. What is namespace? It is a standard C++ keyword. It is also a declarative region which groups the different identifiers together. What is identifier? The identifier can be a variable, it can be a constant, or it can be object. So this namespace holds the different identifiers together. And what follows after this namespace keyword is the name of that namespace. So here std is a name of the namespace. And this using indicates we are using this std namespace in this source.cpp file. So why are we using this std namespace? To understand this, first I will create a one namespace. To create a namespace, you have to specify the keyword namespace followed with the name of that namespace. So I will write a name of that namespace as a my namespace, and then these two curly brackets followed with the semicolon. So this is how I created one namespace. Now I will add one identifier inside this namespace. So I will create one variable called as a data1, and I will assign one value to it, 29. You don't have to assign the value to this variable, and if you don't assign, then it will just become declaration. Alright, so I will add one more statement to use this namespace in my program or in this source.cpp file. And here I will add one statement that will display the content of this variable data1 onto a console window. Okay, so let's compile this code. So it's compiled successfully, and let's run it. So now it is displaying this data1 as a 29. That's great. So this data1 holds the 29 and it displays the same value onto the console window. But what is the relation of this namespace and this string namespace here? So from this example, you might have guessed that similar to this statement, this std is a kind of a one namespace. So std namespace is created somewhere in the library files, and where it is created in this iostream header file, and that's the reason we have to include this iostream header file here. And what this std namespace contains, it contains the declaration of the cout and cin objects. So similar to this data1 variable, the cin and cout are present within the std namespace, and that's why we have to use this statement using namespace std. But what if I don't use the statement here? Then definitely the compiler won't be able to resolve the declaration of cin and cout object. So how to solve this issue? To So if I comment out this statement, then if you want to solve this to resolve this declaration issue, I have to specify the name of that namespace followed with this two colon signs. So what is this two colon signs? They indicate a scope resolution operator. So meaning of this statement becomes cout is an object or identifier that comes under a scope of this std namespace. So it comes under a scope of this std namespace. So now you can see the compiler is able to resolve the declaration of cout. But problem is, if you don't specify this statement using namespace std, you have to specify this std and two colons everywhere when you are using the cout and cin objects. So to avoid this, typically we use this namespace in the program. So this is about this statement, and I hope you are able to understand the meaning of this statement here. Alright, so this is all about this simple C++ program. Hopefully you have understood the meaning of the different things that is present in the program. So thanks for watching this video and stay tuned for the next video.